Returning to our top story, the government is criticising Labor for not officially designating the October 7 attacks on Israel as an overseas terror attack. Joining me now for more on this, Shadow Defence Minister Andrew Hastie. Thank you for your time. We've heard from Labor today and they've pointed out no one from the government has hesitated pointing out these were terror attacks. The official designation is going through the normal channels. Is this as significant as some members of the opposition are saying?
Well, good morning to you, Tom. I think it is. I think October 7th was a clear-cut terrorist incident, and Hamas is a listed terrorist organisation. The Parliament passed a joint motion condemning this as a terrorist act. There are Australians who are affected. I met with one of them just before Christmas in my electorate last year, a young woman who lost her mother, her brother and her niece in very brutal circumstances. She had to leave her job, she had to travel home with her husband to lay to rest her loved ones. That has an impact on her financially, and so until this is declared by the government a terrorist incident, she can't access the Victims Fund for those who are affected by terrorism. So it is significant, and I think it shows that the government is slow, there's a lack of precision, there's a lack of clarity in the Prime Minister's leadership.
Is there an example of previous attacks, how long it sort of takes for the official designation to happen?
Well, if you go on the website of the government, there's a list of every single terrorist incident that has been declared by previous governments, and it's a huge laundry list. The last one, I think, was in the Maldives in 2020. Far less significant in terms of the amount of people killed than what happened on October 7th. So I would have thought the bureaucracy should have been all over this, and they're not. And the government hasn't been leading, and so I'm not surprised the bureaucracy is dragging its feet. This just goes back to the absence of leadership at the heart of the Albanese government.
Taking a broad look at this conflict, once it happened, the challenge always for Israel was going to be reacting, defending itself, as it said it always had the right to do, but trying to avoid escalation. That last part, can we now say that's failed?
Escalation? I think Israel had no choice but to respond to Hamas. And in fact, until Hamas is destroyed both politically and militarily, we will not see peace in Gaza. It's as simple as that. All Hamas has to do is hand back the hostages, surrender and give up power, and this problem would go away. But unfortunately for Israel, they have an existential threat. Hamas is committed, in its own words, in its charter, to the destruction of Israel and the Jewish people. So Israel is at an impasse here. It's got to continue to finish the job, essentially, and that's the problem here. Now, it was always going to be a strategic challenge, given that you have countries like South Africa and others accusing Israel of genocide, which is just absolutely ludicrous and actually diminishes the meaning of genocide in a legal term and in a moral term as well.
One of the concerns of what could be next, though, would be all-out war between Israel and Hezbollah, notwithstanding some of the attacks that have gone each way. There's actually support in polling within Israel for citizens there to say, open this front of war to sort of stave off the attack, if you like. Should the Israeli government be resisting that push? Would that be a bad development for the region?
Look, I'm not there in Israel. I don't have the operational detail. I don't have the intelligence briefings. I can't commentate on this. All I can say is that Israel has a right to its self-defence. There are innocents on both sides. There is deep, complex history behind this. But one thing is very clear. October 7th was a terrorist attack by Hamas on innocent Israelis. Women, children and men were murdered, slaughtered, raped. And Israel had to respond. That's clear. It's a terrorist incident. The government should declare it as such so that Australians affected can access the Victims of Terror Fund. And that's what we're calling on the government to do today, to get on with the job, to lead, to give clarity around this issue.
OK, so and you've made it clear there you believe Israel has the full right to defend itself, but I'm asking about what this potential next step could mean, because this is the fear that would be the next front opened up. Should Israel be trying to, where possible, avoid that with Hezbollah?
Well, I think victory for Israel is the creation of a better political reality, which means a greater sense of security, both actually, but also inside Israel itself. And I think, whilst it has Hezbollah and Hamas at its doorstep, there's going to be a security challenge. So they need to be able to defend themselves. How they do that, of course, is up for Israel. And as everyone will say, it must be done within the laws of war. And I think Israel has been at pains to minimise civilian casualties. I think that's been very clear.
We saw you criticise Australia for not sending a warship to the Red Sea when that request, if you like, came from the US last month. Do we now read into that maybe it's a personnel issue? The latest story was we might need up to 3 of our Anzac frigates, for example, taken temporarily out of service. Is it just a personnel issue? And if so, that seems to be a more long-running one, not just up to Labor, but something that's been an issue that's just grown bigger and bigger over the years.
I think it's probably a combination of both. We know that the Albanese government is under-investing in defence. We know from April last year, when they handed down the Defence Strategic Review, there was no new money. There's a diminished capability, and morale is low. People are separating from the Defence Force at a much higher rate. So we have a retention issue, and we also have a recruitment issue. Next generations of Australians are being drawn to military service as they have in previous generations. So the government has a challenge on its hands. So it's personnel, equipment, but in the end, if the government was really committed to keeping the sea lanes open in the Red Sea and being a friend who delivers on its word, then he would have, the Prime Minister that is, Prime Minister would have sent a ship to the Red Sea. We've done so for the last 30 years. I think it's more than 55 ships have gone to the Middle East in support of counter-piracy and counter-terrorism operations, Tom.
Just want to ask you finally about the Taiwan Helicopters. The government was explaining this week that obviously they were taken out of service earlier in the year in September. They sought a global buyer, couldn't find one. By the time Ukraine requested them, it was December and it was too late. Is that a fair enough explanation?
Look, I think Richard Marles, the Deputy Prime Minister, needs to stand up and explain to the Australian people why he has chosen not to give the Taiwan helicopter to the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainians are in for the fight of their lives. They are being bullied by Vladimir Putin. Thousands have died. It is a challenge for the free world. We need to step up. We need to support them. They've asked for the helicopters. There are problems with the Taiwan, but we're operating within a peacetime risk framework. The Ukrainians are fighting for their survival. Peacetime risk is different to wartime risk. They should be the ones who decide how they use those helicopters, and if they can make a material difference on the battlefield, if that can help them get the edge on the Russians, then we should support their request.
Andrew Hastie, appreciate your time today. Thank you.